Good morning to everybody. I am the external manager of MEDIS, the Major Emergency and Disasters International School. MEDIS operates in cooperation with the Council of Europe and the World Health Organization to promote research and education in the field of major disasters. December 10, Human Rights Day, is among the most important United Nations days of observance. It is important in my field of disaster studies. It is important for world peace, and it is important for Taijimen. Disaster studies scholars have observed that violation of human rights increase during and after disasters. So does, happily, solidarity. But unfortunately, war and natural calamities are also opportunities for those who want to profit from corruption, steal, or abuse human beings who are already in distress. Wars, in particular, always come with torture, looting, and rape, as we are seeing in these days in Ukraine. Accordingly, for those who work in the field of preventing disasters and coping with them, human rights are essential. Human rights are also crucial for world peace. There is no peace without human rights. At the micro level of disasters, evildoers would loot, steal, and try to make money through corruption if the authorities are not strong enough to stop them. At the macro level, it is more likely that rogue states would arbitrarily detain, torture, and kill their own citizens and aggress other countries if they believe that they would not be held accountable under a universal standard of human rights. In this sense, affirming human rights is the best prevention against state-sponsored violence and wars. Finally, human rights are important for the Taijimen case. Any discussion of human rights should examine the behavior of three social actors: those who promote human rights, those who do not respect human rights, and those who suffer because their human rights are not respected. I had the pleasure of meeting personally Dr. Hong Taots, the Shifu of Taijimen, when he received in 2019 the Firma Global Peace Award at the Turin International Book Fair, which is the second largest book fair in Europe. Dr. Hong and Taijimen offer a unique contribution to the promotion of human rights, particularly by reminding the world that the root of human rights is conscience. Dr. Hong initiated the movement that led the United Nations to include among its days of observance the International Day of Conscience, April 5, something that was also important for human rights. Taijimen has also been instrumental in exposing those who violate human rights, in particular through its fight against corruption, both in Taiwan and internationally. Before others, Taijimen had already proclaimed a principle that is now acknowledged by the United Nations, that corruption and the violation of human rights are necessarily connected. Unfortunately, Taijimen also finds itself in the third role. It is a victim of violations of human rights. A biased prosecutor and corrupt tax officer created and continued the Taijimen case, violating the freedom of religion or belief, the freedom of association, the right not to be arbitrarily arrested, and the taxpayers' rights of Dr. Hong, his wife, and his Dizzy. I understand that yesterday, December 9, the Office of Human Rights and Transitional Justice of Taiwan's Executive Yuan organized a seminar in preparation of Human Rights Day on international perspectives and equality law and legislative prospects. Seminars and conferences are always useful, but any discourse on human rights in Taiwan cannot ignore the Taijimen case. It is widely discussed internationally and is now the most famous, or if you prefer, infamous, case of disrespect of human rights in Taiwan. Today, Human Rights Day, we celebrate Dr. Hong and Taijimen as relentless fighters for human rights. We ask that those who do not respect human rights should be held accountable. We express our solidarity to the Taijimen Dizzy as victims of human rights violations, and we call on Taiwan's authorities to solve their case. I will now introduce first, as is usual in our conferences, a message about Human Rights Day from the new United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights, Austrian lawyer Volker Türk.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a miraculous text. At a time when the world emerged from cataclysmic events, the Declaration sets out universal rights and recognized the equal worth of every person. The Declaration, which was drafted by representatives from all over the world, embodies a common language of our shared humanity, a unifying force at the heart of which lies human dignity and the duty of care we owe each other as human beings. In the past 74 years, the importance of universal, indivisible, and inalienable rights has only become clearer. Yet, there is a growing disconnect between the standards on the one hand and the realities on the ground on the other. Even as the 30 articles of the Declaration have sparked transformation in all areas of our lives, the embers of racism, misogyny, inequality, and hatred continue to threaten our world. We face a triple planetary crisis and skyrocketing inequalities exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. And we are grappling with a rise in populist politics and authoritarianism, a deluge of misinformation both online and offline, and an alarming spread of conflict and violence. All of these factors are impeding our progress towards a freer and more equal world. In 2023, we will commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It is also the 30th anniversary of the Vienna Declaration and Programme of Action, which paved the way for the creation of my position, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and my office. This coming anniversary year will be our opportunity to recall the consensus envisaged by the Declaration to reset and to strengthen the remarkable human rights architecture that we have built over the years. With an eye to the past as well as to the future, I hope that the UDHR 75 initiative, which will be led by my office together with our partners, will allow us to rekindle the spirit, the impulse, the energy, and the vitality that led to the Declaration 75 years ago. The language and spirit of the Declaration have the potential to overcome division and polarization. It can make peace with nature, our planet, with each other, and point the way to sustainable development for future generations. The light of the Declaration can shine in the daily lives of individuals, in communities all over the world, in their neighborhoods, in schools, offices, and on the streets. But this requires our generation, including young people, to give the Declaration new life, to take ownership of it, and to repurpose it to meet the needs of our times and the challenges of our future. In 2023, I invite everyone all over the world to take up the torch for human rights and use these rights to forge a common future of dignity, freedom, and justice for all.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the first speaker, Marco Respinti, an Italian scholar and journalist who serves as director in charge of the daily magazine on religious liberty and human rights, Bitter Winter. Marco will speak to us through a video.
Thank you. In today's international debate, there is probably no more uttered an expression than human rights. Of course, it is a good thing, but it has also its reverse of the kind. In fact, it seems like everyone has his or her own definition of and perspective on human rights. And since these definitions and perspectives vary, sometimes much, no real advancement in the defense of human rights is achieved. For ultimately, the contemporary debate seems to be rather confused on what human rights are. There are even lists of human rights which differ vastly from one person to another or one group to another. Sometimes human rights are confounded with personal wishes or the wishes of a distinctive group, or even maybe a lobby. Sometimes listed rights are not really rights, being perhaps only lists. Sometimes historical rights are mistaken for basic human rights, and this is even worse when disputable historic rights are at stake. And sometimes different anthropologies offer view of humanity so diverse that establishing a common standard in this field may prove quite difficult a task. In his 2018 book, The Debasement of Human Rights, How Politics Sabotage the Ideal of Freedom, international human rights activist and writer Aaron Rhodes, president of the Forum for Religious Freedom Europe, suggests that in our times, the whole notion of human rights could have been distorted out of misunderstandings or hijacked for ideological reasons to its perversion, in this case, frequently achieving the opposite goal of what a genuinely defense of human rights is. Yet this field is fundamental. By definition, human rights are undeniable rights that characterize every human being, and every misconception or shortcoming on this topic may easily result in humanitarian disasters. Let us then watch at human rights a little bit closer. If some rights intrinsically belong to the human person, humans should share a common notion of humanity. That shared notion has to be based on an objective standard. If it is not, there is no ground to affirm and defend intrinsic rights for the human person. That objective standard should by definition be debased of every subjectivism, while at the same time recognized and acknowledged and valued by all human individuals. We commonly give the name nature to that standard. Nature is things as they are. Humanity as it is, given, granted, preceding every human will. We find ourselves human as well as we find others to be human. We do not build, construct, engineer them. Just the contrary. Humans fear and despise and denounce all attempts at human engineering as an attack on humanity, an aggression on human nature. We can distinguish humans from animals, plants, and rocks because human intelligence is able to recognize that a human nature exists as distinct from a nature of animals, plants, and rocks, all of them being different one from the other in their turn. Human nature makes humans recognize humans as humans. So rights intrinsically belonging to human person or human rights derive from human nature. If not, they are not human rights. And being human nature intangible, so are human rights, or the rights pertaining to a human being because of the peculiar nature of humans. No one has then the power to deny or curtail or damage those rights and their connected liberties. This closer look to the subject calls then for a restoration of the authentic notion of human rights. Even if he bears no responsibility for my framing and my phrasing of the problem, this seems to be also the key point of the aforementioned book by Aaron Rhodes. Some may object that we are just revolving around the same problem with no way out, as in a dead end. If in fact our starting point here is that some confusion reigns in the field of human rights, of the definition, and that often privates and an institution are unable to find an agreement on what human rights are, calling for a restoration of an authentic notion of human rights sounds like a petition of principle which continually begs the same question with no real substance and, above all, no real progress. This objection is indeed true until and unless human beings and international organizations find a rock upon which anchoring the notion of human rights. Taiji a spiritual way which is continually, unjustly, and unreasonably suffering unfounded persecution by some corrupt official and branches of the Taiwanese government from December 19, 1996, offer an invaluable tool to find the necessary rock that liberates the notion of human rights from any paralyzing subjectivism. The core of the teaching of Taiji Men, probably misunderstood by its persecutors or positively irritating them, is mutual understanding and universal harmony. But human beings can understand each other, even forgive and love each other, as well as nation and organization can live an harmonious life which doesn't cancel the problem, but helps facing and solving it only if they are rooted in and move from conscience. Conscience is the key here, as well as the key word of Taiji Men teachings. Conscience has aptly been the subject of some of our webinars on the Taiji Men case. Conscience is, in fact, the inner and ultimate tribunal of the human person. Conscience is humanity in its deepest meaning. Conscience is the core and the soul of mankind. Conscience is the location of the divine sparkle in humans. Conscience is all these elements and characteristics because conscience expresses the peculiar, irreducible, and intangible human nature. Human beings are blessingly unique in their personality, yet a trait unifies them in what we all perceive with a sufficient level of agreement to be the humankind. The common nature of humans makes them similar one to the other and distinguish all of them from any other living and non-living being. And within the common humanity that unites all human beings, it is contained the light of their irreplaceable individuality. Human nature makes humans similar and diverse. Human nature is the anchor of human rights that all humans, knowing it or not, are searching, that peculiar feature that makes humans human and humane, answering for both their commonality and their uniqueness. Taiji perceives it and teaches it through its insistence on conscience, which to me seems to be a version of the idea expressed centuries ago by Saint Francis de Sales and made a cardinalitial motto by Saint John Henry Newman, cor ad cor loquitur, meaning the human heart speaks to the human heart. Human rights begin here and finish here too, in nature and conscience. This is another reason why the persecution of Taiji is a great blow struck against all humankind.
Thank you very much, Marco, for your beautiful video. Our second speaker today is Willy Fautré, one of the most well-known European experts on human rights and the co-founder and director of Human Rights Without Frontiers in Brussels, Belgium. Mr. Fautré, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. The 10th of December is the day when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was signed in 1948, and it is commemorated worldwide since then by the international community. It was then a day of hope in the future after the terrifying Second World War, which killed dozens of millions of people on the battlefields of Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. However, there is another date in December that is not commemorated as a day of hope in Taiwan, but that is remembered as a day of sadness by Taiji and the Dizzy. It is the 19th of December, that fateful day in 1996, when prosecutor Hu, after perniciously accusing Taiji and Dr. Hong of tax evasion, led hundreds of armed police officers to search all chapters of the Taiji Qigong Academy, as well as the private residences of several Taiji Dizzy. This is when a long series of human rights violations started to hit Taiji. It was a human rights violation to fabricate false charges and to organize a police crackdown on the 19th of December 1996, because two prosecutors had ruled a month earlier that the suspicions were unfounded and that they were closing the case. It was a human rights violation to reopen the case without any legal reason. It was a human rights violation to arrest Dr. Hong 9 days after the commemoration of the UN Human Rights Day in Taiwan, and to keep him in detention for almost 4 months. It was proven to be illegal, as Dr. Hong was later exonerated of all charges and even granted a national compensation for unlawful imprisonment. It was a human rights violation to arrest and detain his wife and to Dizzy a few days later. On the 23rd of December, all assets of Dr. Hong and his wife were illegally frozen, including those unrelated to the activities of Taiji Man. On Christmas Day itself, Prosecutor Hu promoted the establishment of a so-called Victims Association for those allegedly defrauded by Taiji Man. It will later be revealed that some of the so-called victims had in fact never been part of Taiji Man, and the association was basically a fraud. Prosecutor Hu broke the law when he summoned and pressured tax collector Shi Yue Sheng, who died in 2020, to falsely claim that he had investigated Taiji Man and that Qigong Academy was a cram school, providing students rapid tuition, with the consequence that the money given by the deceased to their master in the so-called red envelopes was a taxable tuition fee rather than a non-taxable gift. Before he died in 2020, the tax collector publicly testified that he did not investigate the Taiji Man case. 1 year later, in April 1997, Prosecutor Hu overstepped his authority and wrote to the Ministry of Interior demanding the dissolution of Taiji Man. This unacceptable harassment clearly showed that he wanted to destroy Taiji Man. On the 21st of May 1997, Prosecutor Hu again overstepped his authority and wrote to the government of the counties and cities in Taiwan where the 12 Taiji Man Qigong academies were located, demanding the solution of all of them. On 26 May of the same year, the first hearing of the Taiji Man case was opened in the 7th Criminal Court of Taipei. The case lasted for more than 6 years. On the same day, Dr. Hong and his co-defendants were finally released from detention and later on declared as innocent. But the persecution went on unabated. On the 8th of June 1997, Prosecutor Hu overstepped again his authority and wrote to the Public Works Department of Taipei City and Taipei County, asking that water and electricity supply to Taiji Man be terminated. In the last 3 months of that year, 1997, based on Prosecutor Hu's indictment, the National Taxation Bureau issued tax bills for the years 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, and 96, claiming that the money received by Dr. Hong in the red envelopes in those years should be considered as derived from tuition fees rather than gifts. 2 branches of the National Taxation Bureau were involved, of Taipei for the year 96 and of the central area for the other years. This happened although at the same time, Taiwan's Ministry of Education stated that Taiji Man is not a cram school. And the same statement was reiterated again and again in the years 99 and 2000. On this day of commemoration of the signing of the UN Human Rights Declaration, I could enumerate for hours dozens of violations of human rights perpetrated by Prosecutor Hu against Taiji Man or instigated by him so that Taiji Man could be prosecuted by the NTB and other institutions. In 2002, the Control Yuan, the nation's top watchdog body, investigated the management of the Taiji Man case by Prosecutor Hu, accused him of abuse of authority, and referred his case to the Justice Ministry for sanctions. According to the Control Yuan's report, Prosecutor Hu was guilty of initiating an investigation based on fabricated charges, guilty of violating the principle of confidentiality during the investigation, guilty of interrogating the defendants without prior notice to their attorneys as required by law, guilty of treating the defendants improperly and rudely when interrogated them, guilty of freezing the defendants' assets without any evidence of illegal gains, guilty of overstepping his authority by issuing letters on his own requesting the dissolution of Taijiman, and guilty of calling for the establishment of an association of alleged victims of Taijiman, blindly siding with them or failing to verify the credibility of their claims and hereby damaging his own image of an impartial law enforcement officer. In 2009, the Control Yuan carried out another investigation on the NTB in relation to their misconducts for handling Taijiman case. 7 instances of serious misconduct were found. Despite these thorough reports and the documented serious charges, no directors, officers, or prosecutors were ever penalized by any disciplinary actions. For 26 years, Prosecutor Hu's coup attempt against a charitable spiritual movement, training generations of young people, spending their time and their money to become good Taiwanese citizens and make Taiwanese society more humane, has remained unpunished. The violations of human rights by Prosecutor Hu against Taijiman are innumerable, and nobody will ever be able to establish an exhaustive list of them. But what matters is to go on fighting against impunity. Impunity cannot prevail in deliberately repeated cases of violations of human rights by a recidivist. The fight for justice needs to go on unabated in the Taijiman case. 10 December, a day of hope, and 19 December, a day of sadness, are 2 milestones that need to be commemorated in a specific way. My message to Taijiman and all Dizi is today to have faith in their peaceful but determined war against injustice, to go on fighting for their own case, to help other victims of the tax administration in Taiwan, and to be living examples of human rights defenders while spreading peace and love. Thank you.
Stefania?
Thank you very much, Mr. Fautré, for your very interesting speech. With Mr. Fautré's speech, the first session has concluded. I now pass the podium to Camelia Marin, Deputy Director of the NGO Soteria International, whose headquarters are in Copenhagen, Denmark, who will chair the second session.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers of this event. I was just looking around to see what event can be on the Human Rights Day on 10th of December, and when Massimo invited me for this, I was so happy because it's such a good reason to speak about human rights and in the same time underlining such a situation and, let's say, creating opportunities for Taiwanese government to really make a good correction in what they did regarding Taiji-men. On the Human Rights Day, in order to achieve the respect of the human rights and the humankind to be genuinely humane, I would like to start with the necessity of unifying minds and hearts, which is the key element to be taken into consideration, both for the individual spiritual evolution and for the society evolution, seen from an holistic perspective. As we can see, Taiji-men practice and encourage all of us to states of love, peace, and conscience, which, in their view, should be there in order to become a harmonious society and to rise our level of consciousness. In a way or another, we need to shift from the old paradigm of solving conflicts, which didn't take into consideration the already existing state of unity created by both sides of the conflict being on the same level of the conflict, and which thus was in itself a seed of the conflict, to a new paradigm of surpassing the level where conflicts appear by engaging hearts in this process. Validated nowadays by the newest discoveries of science, this new paradigm of conflict management is based on the concept of concordia, or coherence in the hearts. In the ancient Western philosophy, Pascal considered the heart as a cognitive faculty able to unify key operations of will and intellect without finally collapsing into either. The French author and intellect René Guénon, who was an influential figure in the domain of metaphysics, referred to the heart as the center through which a world can open to all that transcends it. By his two incompleteness theorems, Gödel shows that in any formal axiomatic system, there are truths that cannot be proven by the means provided only within this system, and it is always necessary to transcend it. When we apply these considerations to the issue of solving conflicts, it becomes obvious that it is not possible to do so only at the level of the mind where conflicts appear. The mind has to be transcended, and it can be done just by engaging the heart into this process. The humankind experience so far demonstrates that often legality prevails over righteousness. But when things are considered just as an exclusive result of legislative decisions, the human rights can miss ethic and moral dimensions coming from a common sense of justice as a fruit of the three love, right, solidarity naturally existing among the members of a community. Taiji-men offers a support in helping several people understanding that only going to a superior level, guided by love and conscience, we can become humane and happy for our lives. Human Rights Day, as also Willie pointed out, can be seen as a day of hope. Unfortunately, for Taiji-men community, means more as a day of sadness by its connection with 19th of December 1996, when prosecutor Hu accused Taiji-men and Dr. Hong of tax evasion, and hundreds of armed police officers searched the Taiji-men Qigong Academy premises, as well as the private residences of several Taiji-men Dizi. This is when a long series of human rights violations started for Taiji-men, including the arrest of Dr. Hong for almost 4 months on totally illegal basis, also arresting his wife and other two Dizi. For Taiji-men, we can say that they have 10th of December, a day of human rights celebration, and 19th of December, a day of sadness commemoration. Let's see now a beautiful video showing parts of harmonious and inspiring practices of Taiji Men.
Desiring a life that is both challenging and comfortable, exactly what are we looking for in life? Apart from fame and wealth, have you ever thought about what you really want? A wonderful way and place for people to settle their bodies, minds, and spirits, Taiji Men. Taiji Men is a menpai of Qigong, martial arts, and self-cultivation that has been passed down from Shifu to Dizzy. The contemporary Zhang Menren, Dr. Hong Taozi, inherited the highest level of Qigong in martial arts, as well as the wisdom of balance and the philosophy of Yin and Yang. Taiji Men Qigong Academy, founded in 1966, is a permanent group member of the Taipei Chinese Kung Fu Association, the Ministry of the Interior's Chinese Qigong Association, and the Republic of China's Wushu Wushu Federation. Taiji Men strives to promote people's physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Dizzy practice Qigong and cultivate their minds on a daily basis. Taiji Men Qigong is more than just an ancient sport. It boosts one's physical and mental energy on a spiritual level. Shifu teaches Dizzy the philosophy of Yin and Yang and life wisdom, so that life is not overwhelmed by pressure, difficulties, and imbalances, and that balance and happiness are maintained. Taiji Men's Kung Fu is practiced in everyday activities such as walking, living, sitting, and lying down. Taiji Men Kung Fu is life zen and learning by doing. It is suitable for modern people to practice in their hectic lifestyle. Taiji Men is an ancient menpai with a long reputation that has been passed down from generation to generation. Taiji Men carries extraordinary vision and missions. Taiji Men is an oriental chivalry that strives for the nation, the people, the world, and all living beings on the planet. Taiji Men practices modern chivalry and aids people all over the world. In addition, Taiji Men takes part in a variety of national and international public benefit activities and festivals. Taiji Men also travels to 101 countries across 5 continents, engaging in cultural exchange and promoting the world's treasure trove of Taiji culture. This is why the Taiwanese central and local governments place such a high value on Taiji Men, and why national and international people from all walks of life speak highly of Taiji Men. Following ancient rituals, Taiji Men Dizzy learn from their Shifu, practicing Qigong, cultivating their minds, learning Yin and Yang wisdom, and realizing their full potential. Taiji Men Dizzy not only make their own lives happy, but they also promote the ideas of love and peace to the world, benefiting all human beings, benefiting others, and themselves, maximizing the values of life and making their lives complete.
Thank you very much to Taiji Men for sharing with us such a good synthesis of the practice. And in order to introduce the testimonies, I'd just like to say that on many occasions, the targeted spiritual communities steps back, not daring to say anything. This lack of action, such as not making testimonies, standing for their rights, is making the participants, the members of that group, an easy target. Luckily, in Taiji Men community, Dizzy are standing for their rights and sharing their experiences. I see as a brave act of perseverance of Dr. Hong and Taiji Men Dizzy in spreading love, peace, and conscience, and the continuous struggle for their rights, especially that is a long process, as Taiji Men has been persecuted by some Taiwanese officials for over 26 years. Let's hear some testimonies from people who are suffering and having consequences for their lives. for their beliefs. First, I will invite Ms. Tseng Ting Yu. She is a specialist in New Business Development Division, and she will share with us her perspective about UN Human Rights Day, urge to Taiwanese government to act with conscience and protect human rights. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Camelia. Hello, distinguished professors, experts, and guests. I'm Ting Yu, a Taijimen Dizi. At the age of 3, my mom brought me to Taijimen, and my shifu, Dr. Hong Daozi, keeps reminding us the necessity of improving ourselves, making me get into habit of reflecting myself often and look on the bright side when I encounter difficulties. That helps me a lot in my life, especially in the workplace, so that I'm now very lucky to work in my dream company. Nowadays, the world is chaotic, but my heart is calm through practicing Qigong and doing the meditation in my daily life. And most importantly, I know the purpose of life under my Shifu's guidance. Today is my great honor to join this forum in response to Human Rights Day under the theme of dignity, freedom, and justice for all. Human rights have been universally acknowledged since the end of World War II. However, despite the rapid technology development in decades, people's mentality and human rights awareness are not keeping up with the pace, and even stagnating without progress. And in recent years, the world is confronted with a series of emerging critical problems, driven by the lust for power and money. More people's basic human rights are being deprived of. That makes me more understand why my Shifu Dr. Hong has been relentless in his efforts to spread the idea of conscience, love, and peace around the world through cultural exchange. Only when people know how to love, follow the guidance of their conscience, and long for peace, people can understand the importance of human rights and get along each other with love and tolerance, so that not only people's human rights awareness can be increased, but the world can also be developed in a sustainable way. My Shifu said, conscience is the key remedy to save the world. If everyone could follow the guidance of conscience and have the courage to do the right things out of love, there would be not so many people suffering out there, especially for the world leaders. The outcome of an incident depends on their thoughts in a second. Their good thoughts at the right moment can even prevent a war from happening. Therefore, in the past half centuries, my Shifu and my brothers and sisters have visited over 300 places in 101 nations on their own expenses and efforts, inviting world leaders to ring the bell of war, peace, and love, and make a wish for peace and love, as well as encouraging people to endorse meaningful declarations and take actions to promote conscience and human rights. International leaders and representatives from all walks of life have affirmed the contribution of Taijimen to world peace and joined us to promote a culture of conscience and protect human rights. Everyone can exert a positive influence in our respective role. Tragically, despite all the high acclaims, Taijimen has been persecuted by some Taiwanese officials for over 26 years. The Taijimen's tax case began with persecuted Hou Kuan-ren's illegal persecution, and the National Taxation Bureau directly issued illegal tax bills based on persecuted Hou's illegal indictment and uninvestigated falsified amounts. Although the Criminal Division of the Supreme Court has declared all the defendants in the Taijimen case not guilty, and there is no taxation problem at all. But still, the NBT didn't revoke the tax bills and even teamed up with the Administrative Enforcement Agency to illegally auction off the sacred land of Taijimen on August 21st, 2020. Despite the cruel treatment from the government, my Shifu still encouraged us to love our country and people and to speak out for justice. Because of the Taijiman case, I've been concerned about the legal tax issue in Taiwan since high school years. At first, I participated in some activities like protesting to pursue the truth and to protect Taijiman. But gradually, I realized that the bureaucratic system in this country is too problematic. We see that more and more tax victims in Taiwan come forward to share their nightmare stories. It's heartbreaking to hear some of them are forced to separate from their family for years, and some are even deprived of the money for cancer treatment. Obviously, their basic human rights have been severely violated by officials, and I cannot just do nothing. Therefore, in recent years, I overcame my shyness and easy getting nervous personality and started to share my viewpoints in forums and even make appeals to people on the streets. It's so hard to believe that in a so-called democratic country ruled by law, some unscrupulous tax officials can issue the tax bills without evidence and do criminal acts to cover up their mistakes without being punished. Ridiculously, these few officers can even get bonuses on the illegal tax bills. If the tax reform is not implemented from the root in Taiwan, more tax victims will suffer from it. So here, I sincerely invite Taiwanese legislators to work together to urge the government to abolish the tax bonus and administrative bonus system and establish a clear mechanism to punish illegal officials. Also, I encourage everyone in Taiwan to raise the awareness of human rights and unite against illegal officials to stop the evil forces from expanding and jointly protect social justice and righteousness. Finally, thank you all, the distinguished scholars and experts here, for continuing to speak out for human rights and justice. The world is getting better because of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Ms. Tseng Ting Yu. Very motivational and very well said. I am impressed how well you synthesized the idea of love and conscience, who actually will help us step more for dignity and tolerance and for people's human rights awareness and so on. And yes, it's a congratulations for overcoming your shyness, your easy getting nervous, as you said, personality, and starting to share with us. It is needed to know things from inside. It is needed to find out how exactly things are happening, because else just justice is dry and not always it's showing, let's say, the true side of the story. Thank you again. And now we move further to our next speaker, Ms. Chang Jacqueline. She is a graduate student, and she will share with us now about the idea of putting transitional justice into practice with conscience, align Taiwan's human rights with international standards. And yes, let's hear your testimony, please.
Thank you, Camelia. Good evening, everyone. I'm a graduate student in the Department of Political Science and a volunteer in the Tax and Legal Reform League. Since I was a college student, tax and legal reform and transitional justice have always been topics of concern to me. Taiwan has gone through the February 28 incident, martial law, and white terror, with countless sacrifices and struggles from democratic predecessors. Taiwan finally became a democratic and free country. In Taiwan, President Tsai Ing-wen lists transitional justice as one of her key political views during her election in 2016. Later, the Legislative Yuan passed many bills and established agencies to fully carry out transitional justice work. However, Taiwan's transitional justice has a big problem because our Act on Promoting Transitional Justice actually stipulated that only persecution cases occurred from 1955 to 1992 should be handled. According to studies, Taiwan's democratization is the process which the illiberal democracy transformed into the liberal democracy, especially refers to important political reform during the end of 1980 to the beginning of 2000, such as lifting martial laws and holding the direct election of president. During the transformation, Taiwan still experienced a lot of human rights persecution after 1992. For example, after Taiwan's first direct election of president in 1996, the government initiated a wave of religious anti-criminal campaigns. Many civil organizations were innocently victimized as a result of political rectification, and Taijimen was the biggest victim. The legal and tax persecution Taijimen suffered hasn't completely redressed until now. Many of the tax victims supported by the Tax and Legal Reform League are almost persecuted by the authority after 1992. For example, lawyer Huang Wenhuang was enthusiastic about doing charities, but he was taxed innocently and heavily. In the face of these persecutions, are we supposed to turn a blind eye just because this case did not happen during the stipulated period of Act on Promoting Transitional Justice? Justice shouldn't have an expiration date. As a volunteer of the Tax and Legal Reform League, the Taijimen case has always been a human rights persecution that we are very concerned about. In 2020 summer, when we learned that the government was going to illegally auction Taijimen's land, I follow many experts, scholars, Taijimen Dizi, and other citizens to express our anger and dissatisfaction on the streets. During my summer vacation, I didn't go out to have fun, but went to the Administrative Enforcement Agency and the Ministry of Finance to protest every day. To be honest, I was so tired that I wanted to cry every day. We had to endure the wind, the sun, and the rain, but none of us gave up. We still expect Taiwan's democracy and the rule of law to solve the problem, and we still believe that government officials have a little conscience and are willing to solve people's suffering. However, so many of us have shouted our demand for nearly 2 months, while the officials regarded us as the heir and turned a blind eye. None of them were willing to come out to communicate with the people, and they eventually arbitrarily auctioned off Taijimen's land illegally. I will never forget the auction day. Officials of the Administrative Enforcement Agency immediately fled the scene after announcing that the auction was completed in accordance with the law. They did not face the angry crowd at all, not to mention any kind of dialogue or response. Afterwards, they even asked people to be rational, abide by the rule of law, and not to interfere with the execution of official duties. I would like to ask, who is it that undermines the rule of law? As early as 2007, Taijimen was declared not guilty and tax-free in the third instance of the Supreme Court, and even received compensation from the government. The state also certified the case as a significant human rights violations case. After 26 years, there is still no way to redress a case that was recognized innocent by the government and the Faiyuans. Not to mention that the officials who violated the law and abused power in this case were not punished. The officials protect and covered for each other and even got promoted all the way. Isn't it the biggest joke as a democratic country? I happen to be 26 years old this year, meaning that how old I am is how long the persecution has lasted. Many people have since passed away before justice comes. Finally, I would like to tell a story about the German prosecutor Fritz Bauer. Germany has experienced the Nazi Holocaust, so it attaches great importance to transitional justice. But in the beginning, the whole country, especially the National Public Service system, tried to cover up and forget the history of persecution. At that time, only Fritz Bauer, regardless of everyone's opposition, fought against the entire country alone, trying to dig out the historical truth and blame the perpetrators, only to pursue transitional justice. His story was made into an amazing movie, Labyrinth of Lies, in which there was a sentence that is still engraved in my heart. We can't create a paradise on this land, but we can prevent this land from becoming a hell. Today, I want to send this sentence to President Tsai and all Taiwanese politicians. Listen to your conscience. Don't be kidnapped by a few illegal officials. As long as it is good for people, you should do it bravely and save people from suffering. What's more, former legislator Xu Tiancai once stated, it only requires a very small amount of wisdom and courage to resolve Tai Chi-men case. This case is the key of testing whether the Tsai government's transitional justice is a success or not. Taiwan has always been regarded as a country of democracy, rule of law, and human rights in Asia. In 2020, the National Human Rights Commission was established to align Taiwan's human rights with international standards. Therefore, I still believe that the Taiwan government is capable of solving the problem. The key lies in whether or not the government officials are willing to show their conscience. Not just Taiwan, many countries in the world have suffered serious human rights violations. Every one of us is a world citizen. I hope that everyone can uphold their conscience, respect human rights, help each other, cooperate, and be united, so that the world will move towards peace and everyone will be happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And yes, Jacqueline, so wonderful how you said it. Justice shouldn't have an expiration date. Yes, indeed. And all the actions that you are doing there are an example of how people should fight for their rights. Yeah. And now we will invite Ms. Huang Yuchun, and she will speak about the protecting human rights, which is in every thought. And she will share with us some of her experiences and the immense support she felt from Tai Chi Men community.
Protecting human rights is in every thought.
主持人及线上的来宾、观众们，大家好。
Hello to our moderator, guests and viewers online. I am Huang Yuchun, currently working in a bank, and I have been practicing Tai Chi Men Qigong for 15 years. Today is United Nations Human Rights Day, and I am very grateful to my Shifu, Dr. Hong Taozu, for accepting me as a Dizzy and letting me understand the true meaning of human rights. I realized that the protection of my human rights and those of others lies in my own conscience, in every single thought I have. If everyone did this, not only would there be no conflicts and wars to destroy human rights and the Earth's ecology, but we could even create a better life. In the following, I will share with the online audience what I have seen, heard, and grown from the right to health, the right to freedom of thought, and the right to peace. First, I want to share how being mindful has helped me safely navigate a life and death situation. The story begins when I was 28 years old and pregnant with my first baby. At that time, my husband and I were so happy to be pregnant, but I was told by the doctor that I was at high risk of having total placenta previa, not only need to pay special attention during pregnancy, but also need to be careful about the possibility of heavy bleeding and even hemorrhage during and after delivery. So that behind the joy lurks a slight hidden worry. By chance, a colleague learned about this situation and shared her own experience with me. When she was a child, a big hammer suddenly fell and hit her on the top of the head, bleeding on the spot. Since then, she has been suffering from severe anemia and headaches, not only fainting from time to time, but also being a regular visitor to the health center in elementary school and junior high school. The most pitiful thing is that the headache is so bad that she cried under the blanket. But these symptoms were gone and her health and vitality were restored after she joined Tai Chi Men and practiced Qigong, and she even participated in the 2000 Sydney Olympic cultural performance. Such an inspirational story rekindled the hope that my husband and I had been worried about, so, with this colleague, I went to Tai Chi Men during my pregnancy to hear some story sharing, soak up good vibes, and let go of the large rock in my heart. Fortunately, despite the fact that I haven't yet joined the Tai Chi Men, I have already learned from many of my brothers and sisters who have been practicing for a long time. Even though I had to face the potentially fatal moment of blood loss on the day of childbirth, I was able to do so with composure. I don't feel anxious because I am absolutely certain that once I begin practicing Qigong, I will recover and even have a better future. These thoughts helped me overcome adversity, but what was even more surprising was that in the process of caring for the persecution of Taiji men, Shifu let me understand the true freedom of thought, which is bravery, compassion, and true wisdom, which is suitable for myself and others. Since I can remember, I've avoided conflict and disagreement with others. I only occasionally speak up in groups. I don't want to defend myself even if I am misunderstood. I always think that those who understand me will understand, as for those who do not understand me, forget it, which leads to a distance and gap between me and my colleagues in the workplace. Even though this bothered me, there was nothing I could do about it. In 1996, Shifu and Shirmu were persecuted by prosecutor Ho Quan Zhen, who illegally prosecuted, detained, and confiscated all of their assets, even basic living expenses. However, Shifu not only took Dizzy to 101 countries to promote the concept of love and peace, but also led Dizzy to understand the national development crisis suffered by Taiji men's legal and tax violence, and launched thousands of true tax and legal reform, saving Taiwan with conscience, initiatives and forums. Never turn your head away from suffering. Shifu taught Dizzy through example, words, and wordless teaching. I've been profoundly moved and affected by such a big heart, which has given me the courage to transcend my default personality and courageously communicate the truth to others. Unexpectedly, I found that my interpersonal relationships have improved, and I believe that our mental freedom has increased. In addition, I used to think that work is a tool to earn money, so I often feel tired and feel everything in life were complicated before. I just want to service every customer waiting in the lobby as quick as possible. However, my master Dr. Hong Daozi told us that work is a practice, and service is a kind of practice as well. My work can help many people, let me find the motivation and conscience to work, and I care everyone who comes to the bank sincerely. In mid-March 2021, I successfully blocked fraud cases and protected the blood money of customers, and I also received a certificate of appreciation from the Taipei city government. If public servants who serve the people also understand the importance of conscience, they will not covet power, fame and fortune to harm the people. In the case of Taiji men, I saw many people lost their youth, sweat and even their lives in the past 26 years due to the fault of the prosecutor Ho Quan Zhen. The fault of one person affects the whole world. The military attack from Russia is due to the greed of human nature. It wants to expand its power and seize other people's land. What is the difference between the behavior of the Ho Quan Zhen, Chong Xingford, Li Suter, who framed the master and apprentices of Taiji men? It's just only the scale of large or small. I realize that every thought of goodness leads to heaven, and every thought of evil leads to hell. You must be cautious in your words and deeds in everything, and you must not interfere or even infringe on the freedom of thought of others because of your own selfishness. I also use this concept to educate the next generation. Regarding the upbringing of children, I have moved away the obsession with asking them to score 100 points in the test, and focused more on their moral education. Not framing them with worldly values instead. They can pursue their own interests, be healthy and happy, and develop themselves physically and mentally free. I am grateful to my master for teaching me to distinguish between right and wrong, true and false, good and bad. I hope that such kind thoughts can be spread out like a butterfly effect, so that there will be no darkness, no sickness, and no more persecution in every corner of the world. Everything is worthy of my conscience and soul. Thank you all.
谢谢大家。
Thank you very much. Very beautiful. And yeah, we appreciate very much the fact that actually, as you said, in the protection of human rights, you consider that everything lies on the consciousness in every single thought you and others have in everything we are doing, and not only that actually all the wars will disappear, but in this way, actually, everything will go for a better life. And yeah, I just wanted to point out that in these testimonies, it's remarkable the fact that you are not giving up, you continue going for your rights, and also, which is extremely important, the fact that the government officials are also human beings. And in the moment when they will start really listening and using their own compass for the ethic and morality, then in that moment, actually things will be solved, let's say, by themselves, because they cannot just be puppets, officials doing orders. They'll start having their own consciousness in what they are doing and how they are doing. And now we move to our next testimony, which is coming from Miss Chen Frances, and she is a finance officer. She will speak about human rights, which are built on culture and self-assurance. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Camelia. Hello, my dear friends. Good day. I'm honored to be invited to participate in the International Human Rights Day online forum. On December 10th, 1948, the United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and established the fundamental rights of all human beings, which are indivisible and inalienable and which cannot be violated by discriminatory injustice, unrest, color, religion, and gender. But how to achieve? I have a strong belief that culture and self-confidence are critical pillars of human rights. Let me tell you about my personal experience. Because born prematurely, I have dark skin and I was short, shy, and lacked self-confidence. I was isolated and even bullied by my classmates. Such bullies have continued happening since my primary school, and even I started work. I became quiet and invisible. When I stepped into Taijimen, my Shifu gave me 2 tips. Be happy and know what I want. I didn't understand what he meant at first, but after several difficulties in my life were successfully resolved one by one, I realized that Shifu's advice was closely related to the human rights violations that I had faced since I was a child. This year, when I was happily looking forward for a long vacation on the last day of work, I received a call from an SVIP client who was in an emotional rage because her son didn't submit the required documents and thus could not receive the bonus. She was so angry despite my clear explanation. At the moment, I remembered my civil advice. A quiet mind gives birth to reason. Applied and kind words lead to good karma. So I took a deep breath to calm my mind and then remembered the notification letter I had sent to the client, reminding her that after she changed her identity and submitted the documents for review, she would be able to receive the bonus and the rights of all were protected. She was a lot more at ease when she realized my honesty and empathy. The incident was resolved amicably as a result. Afterward, as the infamous and challenging Super VIP had transferred to various departments, many of my co-workers were interested in how I, who had quickly become a rookie and veteran of the department after arriving, had been able to convince her to put the phone down for good. Honestly, I was only considering 2 things at the time. First, how to resolve the issue for the client, and second, how to resolve the issue for our firm. This time, I was able to successfully resolve both my personal and business crises. I came to realize that I no longer danced with other people's emotions and words as I had done in the past. Since I had regained my confidence, I can easily identify the conflict's balancing point and the best course of action. because I've been under a training in the yin-yang balanced culture of Taijimen. This is also the cornerstone of human rights. Why? After joining Taijimen, I've learned that anger is a poison to the body, much like snake venom. I've learned that preserving everyone's right to health involves avoiding anger, both in oneself and in others. Shifu said in 2003, anger is the highest level of pollution during the SARS pandemic. When more people, the Earth congregate anger pollution to the Mother Earth, the Mother Earth would be pushed to develop natural disaster after accumulating too much negative energy. If the leaders of nations start a war out of animosity, it's certain that every single one of us would be affected by extreme weather and ecological catastrophe. I am grateful for the worldwide blessing ceremony, conscious illuminating the world global prayers for love and peace on October 16, 2022, which spread love and peace energy to the imbalanced planet and all living things, enabling us to cultivate ourselves by listening to calling of conscience. I've been practicing Taijimen Qigong for 14 years, improving my mind and soul and sharing my life experience with sisters and brothers from various fields and age groups. In retrospect, I realized that I used to listen without speaking much and that I was reluctant to speak out when I saw injustice. When I decided to change, I learned how to talk to the others and I have become more confident and happier. Shifu said that conscience is the key to life, that enlightening people's mind is the true good deed. Conscience functions as a key to release the energy of peace that each person possesses and has the power to change thousands of lives with just one thought. I hope that everyone can fully utilize the power of goodness in their respective roles and each small act of kindness to be gathered into a positive energy that will benefit people all around the world. But when I discovered that Taijimen Shifu and the deeds had been hurt by injustice for 26 years, I was saddened, even though the state has exonerated them with the criminal division of the Taiwan Supreme Court's third trial verdict and the state's payment for unjust imprisonment. They have exhausted all internal channels for redress. However, the National Taxation Bureau rejected the administrative consistency principle and kept 1992 erroneous tax bill alive. Additional information. In the beginning, the NTB was also responsible for concealing the evidence and forging the records, which led the administrative court to issue a false ruling that resulted in the wicked cause. NTB has teamed up with the Administrative Enforcement Agency to forbid auction of the confiscated Taijimen's sacred sites of practice. I will never forget the day of August 21st, 2020, when the sky was clear and the sun shined brightly. We were traumatized. While the transitional justice has been not yet fully implemented, and thousands of people in the regions continue to suffer because of unfairness of judicial and the tax system, I remember my Shifu advice and actively contributed to share the truth to more people in order to help myself and others, either to promote Taijimen culture or to highlight the legal and the tax human rights issues. Only when everyone's conscience was awakened, the conscience of root officials will be awakened by being most monitored and reminded in good faith. On this World Human Rights Day, I'd want to make another plea to our nation, our government, and the law-breaking officials to exercise moral courage and the conscience by withdrawing the erroneous tax bill, restoring the sacred sites, and putting the transitional justice into effect. This is my sharing. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Frances. Very beautiful and inspiring your testimony, and especially the advices that you mentioned. A quiet mind gives birth to wisdom. A polite and kind word creates good karma. And yeah, good in solving conflicts also, the fact that health involves avoiding anger, both in oneself and in others. Yeah, it's a good way of looking to the things. And let's hope that all your voices will be heard by the Taiwanese government and they will take a step further in solving the situation. And now we invite our guest for his testimony, Mr. Dave Kuo. He's a director of IC Design, and he will share with us how people should remember the basic concepts of how everyone has dignity, freedom, and equality. Dave, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Camelia. Hello, everyone. It is a great honor to be with you today to respond to the UN Human Rights Day. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdown and reopening affect the life of everywhere. The geopolitical struggle between China and the United States has also put Taiwan semiconductor industry at the center of the world stage. The world has begun to realize that Taiwan plays a pivotal role in the global economy. In today's globalization, regional issue will impact the world also. When the major human rights problem cannot be resolved in the country, the international community should consider how to improve it. The human rights issue in Tibet and Hong Kong are the best example. In Taiwan, the Taijimen case is also a case of political persecution of human rights. I have been practicing Qigong in Taijimen for 16 years. A few days after I started work, I cannot sleep well because of liver infection, which affected my work and my family. I also asked for leave from work, and most of my family responsibility was taken by my wife. Luckily, problem was solved after joining Taijimen. Through practicing Taijimen Qigong, I learned to relax my body and mind, and I can sleep well. It's improved my physical strength. And I have further realized that the heart is the root of everything. The biggest gain is to learn the wisdom of courage, positive thinking, and balance of yin and yang, so that I can notice the good and bad of things equally. Taijimen is the home that my soul and my energy come from. I also learn to help others to have a better life. It's meaningful to me. I have always very proud of freedom of democracy of Taiwan. I trust my judicial system before, but Taijimen case made me realize that is not true. It turned out that the prosecutors do not necessarily represent justice. News reports by media may be artificial. Prosecutors go to media daily to promote investigation-related information and use media to guide the public views of judgment before trial. At that time, I realized that these things were happening in every corner of Taiwan. People are busy with their life and have no time to care about the abuse of public power. It is the human rights crisis in Taiwan. However, facing with this situation, my skillful leaders with wisdom to a path to citizens' rights and personal credit to the way, justice, and righteousness. For the judicial system, we also prove the justice is on our side. On July 13, 2007, the judgment of third trial of criminal case determined that there were no fraud, no tax evasion, no violation of the tax collection law. SIFO also led the Federation of Work, Peace and Love Goodwill delegation to visit 101 countries to promote culture of conscience of love and peace, and with many international friendship and recognition. So far, 128 countries and 450 influential leaders have made a wish, including 55 heads of state, 7 Nobel Peace Prize winners. In the reading of the Bell, the World Peace and Love ceremony, the bell ringer makes peace wish with the prize heart spread out with the sounds of a bell, praying for all living beings, exerting their positive influence and contributing to world peace, sustainable development. My Sifu care about the world safety, always takes every opportunity to awaken the world conscience, share the visions of love and peace with every leader, calm people's hearts at every critical moment. How many people have missed the opportunity to join Taijimen to change their life because of this case? NTP and the Administrative Enforcement Agency even ignored the Supreme Administrative Court's judgment number 422 in the year of 2018, which pointed out the 1992 tax bill was incorrect. They still cooperate with Administrative Enforcement Agency to auction the reserve site of the Taijimen practice place. Such human rights violation and the freedom of religion's belief has not received justice for a long time. It shows that government protection of human rights and freedom of religion is only superficial. Therefore, international attention and support are urgently needed to solve this Taijimen case, suffering over a quarter of a century. It is also hoped for people involved in tax injustice. Finally, I would like to thank to all the participants and the good friends who have worked alongside us along the way. Because of you, we relieve the distressed soul and improve the human rights worldwide. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. And yes, please keep going. And it's a good question why on the Human Rights Day we should speak about Taijimen case. It's obvious that the violations which were done, abuses of human rights, are the only reason to have this angle, to approach this angle. And indeed, let's hope that from the next year further to have other reasons to participate together to such an event. And from your talk, I have something to point out. When I started in human rights, initially I was just trying to understand how the cases are going on. I was studying a lot about the Yogi case, Misa in Romania, and about another one from Italy, about another one from Czech Republic, and so on. And all the time, it was something in common. The fact that actually the prosecutors, they were the, let's say, the bad people in the picture. And the question was how that is possible, because actually a prosecutor should be a neuter official, which is presenting the things, the situations in the most correct, truthful way. And still, in all these cases, and including in Taijimen, and you pointed out in your speech, in all of them, actually, the prosecutors are the bad men trying to instigate, trying to use false fabricated proofs, just leaking out informations to media, which in several cases they are not true. They are just letting sensational things going out in order to create a bad image and further scandal and so on. This is a question which I'm still trying to understand how to approach it. Why actually officials, like people who are paid to do well their job, they don't do it well because prosecutors are neuter functioners, officials. They should just go for the truth, for nothing else. And in all these cases, we just see that actually they are so tendentiously presenting the situation and so much abusing the power and so much starting cases with no reason, just fabricated evidences. Thank you very much for your presentation testimony, and please go further, stand further for the rights in Taiji Men case. And thank you to all of you who were making impressionant testimonies and who were sharing with us from your lives in order to let us understand more of how things are happening and how huge is the impact of all this case upon your lives. And thank you very much for keeping up in your belief, in your following the path of love, peace, and consciousness. And for the conclusions of this event, we will invite Professor Massimo Introvigne. And he is an Italian sociologist of religions, and he is the founder and managing director of the Center for Studies on New Religions. And CESNUR is actually, together with Human Rights Without Frontiers, they are the two organizers of this event, and we are very, very much offering our gratitude for creating such opportunities, especially on the Human Rights Day. Massimo Introvigne is an international, it's studying for several years different cases from different countries, and always bringing, I can say, an uplifting view upon the things, helping to include new perspectives in understanding different spiritual communities and also making them easier understood by the society. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Camelia. And I should say that as all the speakers, both scholars and Dizzy have reminded us, Human Rights Day is one of the most important days of observance of the United Nations. But this year it's more important than ever because it falls in the middle of one of the most heated discussions on human rights in the world. On August 31st, the Office of the UN High Commissioner of Human Rights released a report accusing China of crimes against humanity for its violations of human rights in Xinjiang. Currently, several European countries are asking for an international tribunal similar to the Nuremberg court that judged the Nazi leaders to judge after, hopefully, the war in Ukraine ends, the Russian authorities responsible for war crimes in Ukraine. And as we speak, the World Cup of soccer or football is going on in Qatar, and several Western teams try to use this opportunity to publicly protest the violation of human rights in some countries with an Islamic majority, including Iran. In all these cases, the regimes accused of violating human rights have answered that there is no universal notion of human rights, and what the West is doing with a colonialist and imperialist attitude is trying to impose its own Western notion of human rights to them. They said that Russia, China, or Iran do acknowledge human rights, but there is a Russian notion of human rights, a Chinese notion of human rights, a Muslim notion of human rights, and these are totally different from the notion of human rights prevailing in the United States or Western Europe. This question is of enormous importance. Are human rights universal, or are they different from time to time or from country to country? The answer depends on their foundation. The expression human rights was first used in Europe in the 18th century, but as it often happens, the notion of human rights existed well before the war. Catholic medieval philosophers, including Thomas Aquinas, insisted that all human beings have rights inscribed in their own nature, and these rights do not depend on their recognition by governments or by laws. If there are laws that do not recognize the basic natural rights of every human being, then these philosophers argued these laws are bad laws and they should not be obeyed. However, with the crisis of the Middle Ages, this widely accepted theory was cast in doubt. 1 century after Thomas Aquinas, another influential Italian philosopher and political theorist, Marsilius of Padua, claimed that the rights of the citizens do not come from human nature, but they only come from the law. In other words, we only have rights insofar as legitimately promulgated laws by some government give these rights to us. Now, this opposition between Thomas Aquinas and Marsilius of Padua continued for centuries as the opposition between two main schools of legal thought. The natural law school insisted that there were natural rights that the law or the government does not create but should recognize. Something called legal positivism maintained that human nature is unknowable and the only rights one could meaningfully discuss are those conferred by the laws. Legal positivism came to dominate the European culture in the 19th and early 20th century. One problem of this position is that if human rights are created by the laws, they are not universal, since there are different laws in different times and different countries. So this will make it impossible to criticize even the worst violations of human rights. Because formally, for example, Nazi laws were legitimately promulgated according to the German law of the time. How could we thus condemn the horrors of Nazism? After all, even the Nazis could have argued that they had their own notion of human rights, which is different from the notion prevailing in democratic countries. And they had one that human rights are only for the Aryan race. If you are a Jew or a non-Aryan, you don't have any right. After World War II, Heinrich Rommel, a leading Catholic legal scholar who had escaped Nazi Germany to the United States in 1938, published in 1947 an influential book, which is known in English only with the American title, The Natural Law. But in fact, it was a new English edition of a prophetic text he had published in German in 1936 under the title Die ewige Wiederkehr des Naturrechts, meaning the eternal return of the natural law. And Rommel argued why eternal return, that periodically natural law seems to disappear because legal positivism is much more convenient for governments. They didn't have a superior law to answer to. But always natural law comes back when history shows that obeying the laws does not preserve from horrible violations of human rights. And this is one of the reasons why the United Nations adopted in 1948 a Universal Declaration of Human Rights that repudiated legal positivism and proclaimed that all human beings are entitled to certain rights independently of the country where they live and of its laws. By the way, the declaration was not Western, as historians now know that the drafter who persuaded others in the committee that human rights should be declared universal was the representative of the Republic of China, today Taiwan, a Confucian scholar called Chan Pengchun. Article 1 of the Universal Declaration makes an explicit reference to conscience, together with reason, as the tools all humans can use to recognize these universal human rights. Since reason and conscience are shared by all humans, be they Europeans, Americans, Russian, Chinese, or Iranians, all can and should acknowledge the universal human rights. It is a political law that those who deny the universality of human rights usually are those who do not respect them. Dr. Hong Dao-Tzu, the Shifu, or Grand Master of Taijimen, played a key role in reaffirming that conscience is indeed the basis of human rights and global peace, inter alia through the declaration of International Day of Conscience. Since conscience is universal, so are human rights. In 2009, Taiwan incorporated the 2 UN human rights covenants into its domestic legislation. After this act, Taiwan can no longer claim that it has a different or Chinese or Asian notion of human rights as other countries in Asia do. It should simply respect human rights as universal natural rights, including in the Taijimen case. With this, our webinar today conclude, and thank you again for the beautiful papers, and I pass the floor again to Camelia Marin, who will introduce the final video.
And now, as Massimo said, also I repeat the idea. Thank you to all of you, to all the speakers, experts, or Dizzy. And I hope that you all will continue in the same line. And we have now a last video to introduce, to present. And it's a video about human rights for world citizens. It's the moment again to remember and celebrate this 10th of December, which is the moment of constituting and also celebrating all around the world the Human Rights Day. Please, let's see together this video. And with this, we end this webinar, and let's hope to remain in this atmosphere of uniting in the hearts and having faith for continuing all the way till the awakening of the consciousness. Thank you very much to all of you, and hope to see you soon in another event.
Thank you all.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Great webinar. Absolutely. Yeah.